Prepare yourselves for a battle of epic proportions between two titans. Feast upon their voices and revel in their words. This is Dueling Ogres.
Hello, Ogres, and welcome to episode 201. Thank you for joining us, as always, on this esoteric Saturday evening, Earth date April 18th, 2020. I'm your host, Remington Hitchcock, and with me, as always, my co-host, Brandon Full. Say hello, Brandon.
Hello from the quarantine, everybody. How's it going?
from the deep, dark reaches of the quarantine.
From the void.
From the void. It's a little foreshadowing there. Also with us today, we have special guest Mumfrey. If you read our website, you will see his articles about all sorts of gaming content, also known as Nega-Larry, or just Larry for purposes of the podcast. Hey, Larry.
Hi, tonight I will not be negging out. I will be a good boy.
And we brought Larry on because he is the most familiar with our guest, the creator of the RPG system Black Void, Mr. Christopher Sevaldsen. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, I'm great, thank you.
So Chris is joining us all the way from the other side of the world in Singapore, where it is 8 a.m.
Yep.
The boys are in the background being rambunctious and having a good time.
Yeah, I locked the door and asked my wife to take care of them for once. So,
Oh, bless her heart. With 3 boys, I'm sure that's a handful.
Yeah, exactly. But they're charming little buggers, so it's all right.
So that means that it's Sunday morning for you, Mr. Time Traveler.
Yes, exactly. I'm calling from the future.
You've stepped through the void with your void travel abilities.
Exactly, and it's just as quarantined as the past you're living in. But what can you do?
Oh,
That's a shame to hear.
Yeah, I know. But we'll see how it goes.
Man, a world I know that we kind of joked about not talking about it, but I think it's important to touch on it a little bit. Like, it's a worldwide phenomenon.
Yes.
This quarantine, this pandemic, and it's crazy. Like, we've in the States here, it's really something that we have never experienced.
Yeah,
not since like the plague of or the flu from like 1913 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've been on quarantine where all the states are recommending that, or most of the states are recommending that people are to avoid contact with people as much as possible and stay inside as much as possible. And people are getting stir crazy, and
yeah,
it's one of those weird phenomenon about Americans is that they hate being told what to do.
It's not just Americans. I mean, if you want to go into seclusion, you love it. But if anybody tells you to do it, then all of a sudden it's the worst thing in the world.
Right? Yeah.
So
I saw a meme on
about that everywhere. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was just about to say that. Like, I'm introvert and I like being on my own, except when people tell me to, or something to that effect.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a Baby Yoda one that said something very similar to that today.
Yeah.
So we have Chris on today because you have a new module out for Black Void.
Yes.
And we're just going to kind of jump right into it. You have done several podcasts through the success of the Kickstarter since 2018, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The Kickstarter itself was over 200% funded.
Yeah.
We'll just kind of touch on a few brief things real quick.
Sure.
You are originally from Denmark.
Yes.
You lived in Dubai for a while, correct?
Yeah, 9 years.
And then, like we said, now you're in Singapore.
Mhm.
I am fascinated by that particular that particular turn of events. What got you there?
Well, my wife actually.
Oh, really? This is kind of the get to know your guest portion of the
Right.
show. So,
Well, so what happened was my wife got offered an expatriation to Dubai, and then we just had our first son at that time. He was around 1,
mhm.
but we thought that sounded really interesting and promising. So we thought, what the hell, let's go for it. And it was only supposed to be a 3-year stint,
Mhm.
but clearly we got stuck.
Right? Yeah. You said 9 years.
Yeah, exactly. So 9 years and 2 more kids later, she actually gets offered another expatriation from Dubai to Singapore, and we thought, yeah, why not? I mean, we love Dubai and we have, a good life there and lots of good friends and so on and so forth. But I guess we're adventurous, so we decided to tear up everything and then move off to Singapore, and here we are now.
That's crazy. And that's not too far from the other side of the world from where you're originally from.
No, I know. I mean, I usually tell my mom and dad when I talk to them, like, it's not like I moved 10,000 kilometers away.
Right.
It's only like 9,950 something.
That last 50 is the
That's the
game
important
breaker. Right.
Except when they're in their summer house, then it is over 10,000, but we don't mention that.
And now you yourself, before the creation, I guess, of Black Void as it stands today, you were marketing director.
Yeah.
You have a bachelor's in philosophy, right?
Yeah.
And a master's in communication.
Yes, true.
So, and are you still doing that sort of thing, or is Black Void your life now?
Black Void is my life.
Yeah.
I've dedicated all my time to it, and really trying to get that up and running properly.
Yeah.
So I made a deal with my wife before launching the Kickstarter, asking her if she could carry the financial burden for a while and allow me to try this out. And luckily, she said yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it's at the moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I owe it to her.
It's really, really forgiving because she does not play any sort of role-playing games.
No, not at all.
That's really awesome to have somebody support you in something that is near and dear to your heart, but not necessarily something that they have any interest in.
Exactly. But I mean, what she could see was the passion, and obviously she wanted to support that, whether she understands the nitty-gritty of it or not,
Right.
or wants to.
Right.
So, but yeah, so no, but her support has been instrumental in all this. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. That's love, guys.
Yep, sure is.
So, Christopher, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got started with the Kickstarter?
Sure. I mean, Black Void in itself has been, or had at that time been, a long way in the making, to be honest. I mean, I think the first idea of it probably started maybe 10, 15 years before the actual Kickstarter. But I think a lot of us gamers, are doodling with our own ideas and our own systems and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But this one had just, grown and grown and grown, but then it had been on a hiatus for a bit and then came back and so on and so forth. And then what happened was I left my job because I had an opportunity to join an investor group. And we did that, and that I found out didn't take as much time as I thought it would. And I'd always had the dream of actually doing something about Black Void, doing something real about it.
Right.
And then I thought, well, this is the perfect opportunity. I have this thing that I'm doing. on one hand, but that's not taking up all my time. So why not, give it a go? And I did, and it started to garner some interest from people, and then I had seen Wade Dyer from Australia. He launched his Fragged Empire on Kickstarter, which I backed, and I contributed a little bit too. And I thought, if he can do that, then I can try to do that as well, And then I had the chat with my wife, saying, if I try to go for this, can you support, and so on and so forth. And she said yes, which was amazing. And then I started to give it my all. And then what happened was I got really frustrated with it, actually, and couldn't really figure anything out. And then I had a chat with my wife again, and then she looked me straight in the eye and said, "You know what? You should just drop it.
Right.
Just drop the thing." And that's what spurred me on. Like, screw
Really?
this. Now I'm definitely going to do it,
Yeah, it really lit the fire under your ass. Yeah.
Exactly. And because that is the pivotal moment, because she did both things. So she supported, but she also told me not to do it. And those two things in combination is what actually lit the fire under me,
You have a bit of a competitive streak then.
Yeah, but who wouldn't want to prove their wife wrong, right?
Right, absolutely.
And then from then on, it was just full throttle,
Yeah.
And then I spend.
So now, was this was obviously after the hard drive failure?
Yes, you heard about that. Well, the hard drive failure, that's actually a long time ago, but
Way
we
back.
don't talk about that anymore because then we start crying. No, actually, I think the hard drive failure was good. In the sense that, second drafts are usually better than first ones.
Right. Yeah.
And the hard drive failure was, a lot of that was very generic, at least compared to what Black Void is now.
Well, and early on, the idea of Black Void had a lot of basis on AD&D and 3.5, correct?
Yeah, sure, it did. I mean, that's what I sort of grew up with.
Right.
So obviously that was the base. And then as I expanded my, experience with different systems and different worlds and so on and so forth, then things change. And then obviously, real life events such as moving to Dubai and so on and so forth, that obviously impacted a lot as well.
For sure.
So it's definitely been a journey. But I think, when the hard drive failed, so to say, I could sort of pick and choose the good bits that sort of stuck in my mind. So I think in terms of that, it actually sort of helped a little bit.
It's definitely one of those things of the creative process where, especially if you have something so detrimental that you lose, 300 or so pages of something that you've kind of had brewing in your head and you're excited about, then to only be able to recall the best parts of it, it really does make the whole project better overall if you set forth to making it.
I agree. The only thing, so now you think you should probably do it again, right? So just write a whole thing and then just delete it and see what you remember.
Oh God. See, now we've done 200 and some episodes of the podcast.
Yeah.
And I have gone back to listen to early ones. We have, I think, 6 of them that aren't actually released anymore, just because they were rough. I was recording on a blue snowball set to omnidirectional pattern.
Right.
And so, I mean, we were in a big cavernous thing and it sounds cacophonous. And so
that works for some things,
Yeah. But at the same time, I pretty quickly kind of threw myself into the whole like audio aspect of it and making sure that it sounds as good as I can make it sound. And going back and listening to older episodes where I had like the cheaper mics, and it's interesting to see how far I've come.
Yeah, exactly. It puts things into perspective, right? It makes you appreciate the leaps and bounds you've actually made.
Absolutely.
Because presentation is important. I mean, looking
Oh,
at,
yeah.
at some of my old stuff and then comparing to what it looks like now, it's a world of difference, right? But that, it wouldn't be where it is now without those earlier steps.
Yeah.
As far as it goes, the setting or the system? Did you create the world around Black Void first, or did you create the system of character leveling up and stuff? Well, not leveling up, but the character
grew
design.
alongside each other, to be honest. So the basics was sort of simultaneous, but then as the setting and the world grew in my mind, and different aspects, then things were added or taken out of the system, because I think in the beginning it was sort of tropish and generic in how everything worked. You know, you had your clerical magic, you had your wizardly magic, blah blah blah, all the usual stuff. And then at some point I thought, like, no, I don't want to do that, because there's so many others that do that and do that extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to do something that really encapsulates sort of the essence of the cosmos I'm trying to build here. And that's when things sort of started to veer off, especially within the more sort of esoteric aspects of the game.
That's one of the interesting things that I found, because I don't really have. I've looked over the stuff that the literature that's kind of been out, but Larry is the one who's really followed the game, and I don't think he's actually had a chance to play it himself. I know that he purchased the main the core rule book itself, and he has read through it. But I haven't had a chance to look much into the system, just really kind of familiarizing myself with. And it's a kind of system. We have grown up on D&D. We still play even 5th edition whenever we have the chance now.
Right.
But I mean, for the most part, we have never stepped foot, or I haven't especially, have never stepped foot into the role-playing games that are, like you said, more esoteric, like Black Void seems to be. Like, the system itself seems very based on character creation and how your character progresses, both for himself or herself or itself, but you know, you have all sorts of different options, but also how they interact with the world itself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my point was to do something where the basics were as simple as I could make them.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, as versatile as well. And as you're saying, character creation that's a lot of it. I think that's the first maybe 60 pages of the core book or something like that, just because there's so many options. But the way of going about it is really quite simple. I mean, it's a points buy system.
Right.
And it's classless, because to me, classes don't really make sense. I wanted it to be believable, maybe not realistic, but at least believable.
Right.
And just because you're good at swinging a sword doesn't mean that you can't, all of a sudden become a diplomat and so on and so forth. So I wanted to take all those sort of restrictions that you have in D&D and so on out of it. And I think I managed to achieve that fairly well, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to have something where you could incorporate pretty much any play style you wanted to. If you want to run intrigue with it, you can. If you want to run horror with it, you can. If you want to run action with it, you can do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go murder hobo with it, you can do that as well.
That's one of my favorite phrases ever, is murder hobo.
I know, I love it as well. I one of my players, I called him a murder, got slightly offended at it because I don't think he'd heard the term before. I'm like, that's a common term in RPGs. Anyways, So yeah, I mean that's what I wanted to do, and I think in some aspects it worked out very well, and I think in others it might need some tweaking for future editions. I don't know, but I think overall it seems to be working quite well, and with the feedback I'm getting, others seem to think so as well. So that's fortunate.
Oh, sure. And with it, I mean, obviously, it was wildly popular when Black Void was initially getting off the ground. I mean, 200% funded is nothing to balk at when you're talking about an RPG. I mean, people are creating. I don't want to say that they're creating systems all the time, but it's something that has become more prevalent now that technology has brought us to a point, and world culture is really kind of embrace the RPG zeitgeist.
Yeah, exactly. We're not the outcasts anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember in a couple of them, this was interesting to me when you were living in Dubai. You were able to kind of play test through your ideas and the way that the system progressed through the Gulf role-playing community.
Yeah.
Now that you're in Singapore, do you have a similar role-playing scene that you can kind of bounce, future projects through?
It exists. I haven't had the opportunity to really connect with it that. So what I am doing, I'm playing through Discord and other online medias.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I would dearly love to set up a group here where we could actually meet face to face. But getting established and with 3 kids and so on and so forth, there's just I haven't really had the time to do it yet. But I know the scene exists.
Yeah,
Rather large here as well, which is really really cool. So now that this module is out, and as soon as COVID-19 gets less, then I'm definitely gonna connect with those guys. I mean, I've been to some of the friendly local gaming stores and so on, and there's a lot of cool people there. So at some point, I'm sure I will.
That's the other interesting thing about the world that we live in today, where everybody can be as interconnected as we are, is that you have the ability. I mean, do you still are the people from the golf role playing community in your Discord to play with you and help out as well? You have old friends, or
some of them are. I mean, the ones I'm playing with now are. There's a couple of guys from the US. There's one who sits in Australia. There's one who's in Taiwan. So, which is another really interesting aspect. You're sitting there playing your game with people from all over the world, and they're just a click away. Which is amazing.
Yeah, it's really weird. Just sitting here thinking about it, it's just like, man, it's really crazy.
Yeah, because you're on the other side of the globe. So
yeah.
Hey.
So we've talked about the kind of the outside elements, but do you want to give us a rundown of what the Black Void RPG actually is, like what the setting is?
Yes, sure. So it's if we take sort of the basic start, it is that it sets off on Earth when Babylon was the greatest city on Earth, as it says on the backside. And then cataclysm strikes, and mankind is thrown into the void and then spat out into various places in the cosmos. And a lot of them ends up in this place called Lin the Eternal, which is a vast alien city. And that's sort of the starting point of everything, because here humanity finds itself at the bottom of the hierarchy. Bottom of the food chain, and they're gonna have to try to rebuild everything they lost, or die trying. Basically, it's a struggle for survival, and it's a little bit different to what most RPGs are, where humanity tends to be the dominant force.
Right.
Here, it's exactly the opposite, which in itself presents some interesting outsets. I think, at least. Because what I wanted to do was I wanted to sort of revitalize the mystery, because everything has been done. So I wanted to have a cosmos and a universe that nobody about. So you actually have actual wonder and discovery as you embark on these adventures, because that's just an orc, or that's just a goblin, and so on and so forth, because all of the species are original, and all of the places are original, and so on and so forth. So that being said, there are different layers to it. So that's the survival one, is the more sort of practical aspect, and then you have the whole aspect about humanity, and what is humanity when taking out of its comfort zone and ethos. They're put in a completely alien environment where human, let's say, understanding and so on doesn't really make sense, or is completely irrelevant, because that's not how all these alien creatures think. So what does that do to morality, for instance, or how you go about doing things, so on and so forth. So there are, let's say, sort of philosophical aspects that can be put into it as well, because you don't deal with the good and evil, you deal with all the gray areas. And because who's to say something is good or evil, because that's in large described by the culture that you're brought up in, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Right.
So there's a lot of these things, and then you kind of have the whole refugee situation as well, because all of humanity are refugees. So that kind of puts a spin on things as well.
So is the void itself inherently evil then? Or is it also gray?
No, it isn't. So basically, the cosmos void on one hand and cosmos on the other. So the void is chaos and creation, and the cosmos was originally just matter, and that was it. And so the void influenced the cosmos and made it into what it is. So without void, there would be no life, because that is chaos, creation, and change, and so on. And matter is just exactly that. That's just matter. So the void in itself is neither good nor evil. It just is.
It's kind of like it's almost like an expanded version of the Big Bang Theory, where, there was nothing, and then boom, explodes into existence all of the matter and the creation and the things that collide and make us the stardust that we are.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it goes beyond good or evil in terms of the void. I mean, there are sentient beings in there, and most of them are probably raving mad. But their sensibilities go beyond anything humans could comprehend anyway. So it's
right.
And that's where it's all sort of gray areas, rather than knights in shining armors that are good and save the damsels and so on.
Right.
Well, Chris, can I ask you a question with humanity being torn out essentially from Babylon? Is there anything in the game which specifically would forbid or make it impossible for if your characters wanted to try to find their way back? Is that something they could do, or essentially was Earth destroyed?
See, that's the question I'm not going to answer. Because, well, as is written in the core book, some are trying to find their way back to Earth, presuming that it exists, and others presume that it's destroyed. So I'm afraid that's one of those things that I cannot tell you.
Is that just a sly way of saying I don't have that product planned out yet?
Or is it a sly way of saying I have that product planned out yet, and I'm not going to reveal it?
I like to think of it as
the appetite,
right? I like to think of it as, it's one of those. That's the cool thing about the role playing genre, is that you can do whatever you want.
Exactly.
And I mean,
that's what I wanted as well.
In one universe, the Earth can still exist, and in another universe, it's completely destroyed, and we have all these.
Exactly. I mean,
the multiverse theory.
I want to leave it up to the arbiter. Yeah.
Right. The multiverse theory lives on in role playing games for sure.
Yes. True. And I mean, but because I've been asked about whether there is a meta plot and whether there is, a timeline that everything adheres to, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And I'm hesitant to have a meta plot in that sense, because I want to leave it open to whatever the arbiters and players want to do. But so at the moment, if an arbiter decides that the Earth still exists and his characters go there, then he can do that. And if he or she decides that it's not, then that's the way it goes. I don't want to do this, at the moment at least, where this is how it is and this is the only way it can be done.
Sure.
Because that limits it too much. I want it to be a cosmos that you can do whatever you want with. So basically, I provide avenues that can be explored, but I don't want to do, because you often see this in great works where they take something that's established and people love, and then they turn it upside. Dragonlance did it, for instance, and I hated that, to be honest.
Did you?
So I don't want to be that guy. I wanted to, if people love the outset of it, I don't want to ruin that for them. Then I'd rather go and do something that's completely different if I haven't. I don't want to wreck it.
So to keep that question maybe a little more broad, have you ever thought about putting out novels based on your particular view of the Black Void universe?
Yeah, I have, for sure. And I'd love to, and I might do someday.
Yeah, maybe something down the road.
Yeah, there are some ideas floating around, and I have a pretty good idea who the main characters would be. But right now, at the moment, working on quite a few things, so I don't know. If there was only more hours in the day.
Oh, for sure.
So, but at some point, I would love to have or something of that sort with going on within the Black Void setting.
So there's space travel in the Black Void, correct?
Well, it's not really space travel; it's void travel, which is sort of different. So it's if you've ever seen, what is it, Babylon 5, for instance. The void is this sort of unreality. But what happens is the ruptures between the void and the cosmos, you can go through them, and then you can, if you're enlightened, you can follow the esoteric currents of the void, and then you can pop out on other worlds in the cosmos. But it's not really space travel as such.
Okay.
I heard somewhere that it was kind of inspired by Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath.
Yes.
So H.P. Lovecraft. Is there a lot of Lovecraftian ideas that you've really fed off of? Is that the kind of the catalyst of a lot of different things, or is it just such a melting pot of different experiences that you've had of your gaming life?
It's a melting pot. I mean, some aspects are Lovecraftian. The ghostly Asians are definitely a nod to the Great Master. And the like I've said, the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, that definitely sort of inspired that you can travel between worlds, but the mythos itself and so on has not really been an inspiration. It's like you said, it's been sort of nitpicking from here and there and inspiration from everywhere that's sort of combined into what Black Void became or has become.
Right.
But as far as that type of thing goes with horror, not just cosmic, but horror in your games, if you as an arbiter want to go ahead and throw that kind of scenario at your players, you've got the mechanics in there for your fear and your sanity system and how that can degrade a character over time. So the modularity of your game allows for so many different styles of play. It's really handy that way, that you can play the same game different ways and still be effective within the rule set.
Yeah, that was the intent, obviously within the framework that I had to set up. But I'm happy that you think it actually worked, because that was what I was trying to achieve for sure.
So as far as getting started. So, like I said before, I haven't really experienced this kind of esoteric game. It's been, really fantasy based. I know we've played. We tried. Brandon, what was the superhero one?
Mutants and Monsters, I think.
Was that the one that we tried, or Mutants and Masterminds?
Yeah.
I remember that we tried that one time, and it kind of flopped. And then didn't. And it's one of those things where you've grown up for so long playing in a fantasy setting, and that's kind of where I'm most comfortable personally.
Yeah.
How does one who has just kind of been locked into the D&D scene really get into Black Void?
Well,
Like, is there a good starting place that you would suggest, like a good campaign, or like either like the Quick Starter or the Flight from the Salvation or any of the other adventure modules?
Yeah, I would say Flight from Salvation Square was created to be sort of a nice gateway into Black Void, because it's a fairly simple scenario, but that can be played in a myriad of different ways, because it's not linear. I try to avoid doing linear scenarios because I think they're boring.
Right.
But that also makes it very difficult to write them, to be honest. But anyways,
Yeah.
so I would say, for me, Flight from Salvation Square is a good starting point, because it gives you an idea of the flavor, and it gives you an idea of the atmosphere and how things work without getting too nitty gritty or too deep in the mire,
Right.
So that was definitely the plan. I think to a certain extent there's enough familiarity in Black Void and the system and so on, in terms of D&D, for instance, that there are recognizable elements.
Yeah.
It's not made to be. This is probably not the first RPG you'd want to play. I mean, the rules
Right.
are supposed to be fairly simple, and I think they are.
Uh-huh.
But the setting and the concepts that are being dealt with are probably for not necessarily veterans, but for people who played other RPGs before. I would say it's not the entry level RPG.
Right.
But I think, if you take the Quick Start and Flight from Salvation Square, which obviously are both free downloads for that exact purpose, you can within a couple of hours get familiar enough with the setting and the system that you can see whether it's something for you or not, for sure.
And that's definitely one of the things that I've found really handy. Of course, it looks like all of the literature itself, either in PDF or physical form, are released through Modifius.
Yes,
that is one of the things that
distributed through them.
Yeah, distributed through them. Because I know that you do have merchandise available on the Black Void Games website as well, but the system itself is distributed through Modifius.
Yes,
and I do find that very handy that you could put out, your free quick start, a free module to get somebody started.
Mm.
And that's not a small thing either, because your Black Void, the Flight from Salvation Square, as a free download. I mean, you could use the quick start to get a handle on the rules, but you've got a 30-some page module there that you're putting out just to try the system. I mean, that's a hefty thing to just put out there, for free, to get somebody, to play with their friends and get them into the system, because it's got enough meat to it to where you get a taste of the system and the setting, and it's a nice module. Especially, like I said, you put that out there to have for free to try it out, and then they can jump in and get those who would be gods, or maybe your newest module that you just released, something like that, because it's a nice feed system to get them in there.
Yeah. I mean, I was considering whether to do Flight from Salvation Square in that way, but I don't do very well in writing short scenarios. I try to, but then it gets granular, and I want to shove so much stuff in there to really, get the atmosphere and everything in there. So apparently I'm not very good at writing short stuff.
Hey, I feel your
but,
pain. I am a wordy SOB when it comes to
right. I mean, you try to say, I'm just gonna write half a page, and then 6 pages later you're like, oh, what happened there?
Right, absolutely.
But and also because I want to present Black Void in the way it should be presented, which is why the Flight from Salvation Square is what it is, because I wanted to really showcase what the purchasable modules are like, but still, in a slightly shorter version, obviously. But if you go through Flight from Salvation Square, you know exactly what you buy when you buy the other ones. It's not sort of a teaser in that way. It is an actual module.
Mm-hmm.
But just one that's given to you to try it out.
Larry, did you want to touch on the When Darkness Falls as well?
Right, because when you ran your Kickstarter and you hit every single one of your stretch goals, and I was looking at that, and were those exclusive just to your Kickstarter backers, the Darkness Falls, and then you had episode 2 and 3 where you ended up putting them into a compilation, didn't you?
Right. So When Darkness Falls is part 1 of those who we got. So that's how it worked. So at the time, what happened was I had written When Darkness Falls, and then because of the Kickstarter, I managed to get enough funds to hire John Creffield and Dan Cross to write the 2 remaining parts. So the original version of When Darkness Falls, that was exclusive to Kickstarter, but the version that wound up in Those Who Would Be Gods was tweaked a little bit.
Okay, so it still lives on past the Kickstarter in Those Who Would Be Gods.
Yeah, exactly. The entire Who Would Be Gods is false.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Can I ask you another? It's sort of Kickstarter adjacent question, Chris.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
You had mentioned the Fragged Empire Kickstarter that sort of was inspiring to you.
Yes.
I saw where Modiphius is also distributing the Fragged Empire and then the related products as well from Mr. Dyer, is it?
Yeah.
Is that just a coincidence, or did either one of you get sort of in with Modiphius and then contact the other about it or anything like that?
It's a coincidence, actually. I knew that Wade has distribution with Modiphius in, I think it's only Europe. I think he's got another distributor for the US. But actually what happened was during the Kickstarter, as I was going through the lists of backers, I noticed that there was one email that was something at modiphius.com. And then I thought, that can't be. There's no way,
Right.
And then I thought, should I reach out or shouldn't? And then I wrote to Lloyd, as it turned out to be, and I said, Lloyd, I noticed your email handle. Are you working for the Modiphius? And then I think a day later or something, he writes back like, "Yeah, it's I'm there. I backed games, so on and so forth." Which was obviously so cool because that's sort of a pat on the back already, And then I wrote to him saying, if one was to be interested in finding a distribution partner, who would I send it to at Modiphius,
Right.
And then, I was sweating and looking at the clock just to see if the reply would come through, right?
Right.
And then I don't think I had to wait too long, but then an email came through. It's like, yeah, you have to write to Chris Burge, and he's actually waiting for an email from you.
Nice.
What?
That's one of those things about business that is just so true. Is really about who you know and
exactly
where you can leverage even in the most humble and kind way as possible, be like, hey, what's going on over here?
Exactly. So I owe debt of gratitude to Lloyd, whom I actually met last summer, because I went to London to meet the guys, and I went to see Games Quest, the shipping partner over there as well. So there's no connection between Wade being on Modiphius and me as well. Mine was not purely coincidental, but on a different path, so to say.
Right. So we've definitely talked about, for those of the Dueling Ogres fan base who maybe haven't heard of Black Void or have maybe just read Larry's article and now having you on, we've covered kind of the basics of the game itself. So let's talk about the new module and kind of see what this has in store for anybody who's already been playing Black Void. Newest is Dark Dealings in the Shaded Souq.
Mm-hmm.
What does this particular module bring to? Does it bring anything extra? Does it bring some new mechanics, or is it more exposition on certain clans or races or anything like that?
Yes. So the Dark Dealings in the Shaded Souq takes place in the Camellia district, which is one that hasn't been explored in any official module yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a new thing. Secondly, there are a number of new species. There's 3 new species in there. Mm-hmm. You get stats for some of the groups and factions mentioned in the core book, but without stats.
Gotcha.
And it's just a great adventure that Dan Cross he wrote. So yeah.
So now the core book has something like 20 plus different creatures, sentient creatures with like different cultures and of their own. Mm-hmm. And some of them are explored, obviously, and some of them aren't. And that's kind of what this module does.
Yeah, well, what this does is there are no new species. The ones that are there are what's termed as beasts. Okay. I don't really go for monsters.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of goes a little bit deeper into the sentient or sapient species that are already in existence.
Mm-hmm.
But then it explores. Well, I don't want to give too much away, obviously.
Right, sure.
Exactly.
It's got. Well, I can tell you that the module has had several name changes, and one of them was Beasts of Camellia, because the whole thing is that the protagonists are framed for massacring exotic beasts in the Camellia district. So gotcha. Obviously you're going to have some exotic beasts in there, and those are the ones that are new.
So this is all still happening in Lynn, then, in the Eternal City. Yeah. Gotcha. Larry, didn't you have some question on Lynn?
Oh, just lots of stuff that went more into maybe future products, because as I was reading through the preview copy we got, I had to keep referring back to the core book because I couldn't keep all the different races and things straight. And I was just going to say, in the core book, there is a table you put together with species, their physique, mentality, key occupations, and their type of society. And that was invaluable because I used that to try to keep the NPC, all the characters straight and why they,
cool.
How they interacted with each other and why some people didn't like each other initially. And a lot of that made more sense, once, because you put so much into the setting and the detail and like the history of the different species that you will encounter here, that there's a lot of backstory and richness that it keeps being brought out in the subsequent products that came out after the core book. Yeah. Everybody, the authors have done such a good job of keeping everything like flowing because it just sort of builds on the previous products and expands on things in the core book in a way that just makes it richer and deeper and is consistent. So the world building is amazing.
Happy you think so. Thank you. We do work very hard on that. I mean, consistency is key. Because we all, we see things about the Star Wars saga and so on, and they're all like, but that doesn't correlate with what happened in episode whatever. Right. I don't want that.
It's a tall order. It's a hard thing to keep straight too.
Yeah, I know it's more or less impossible. So I'm hoping groups we do make people don't notice them. But yeah, and I mean, because Dan and I we worked together on Those Who Would Be Gods, of course, and it's written by him, but it's in a large part a collaboration, because I spent probably 1.5 months editing it, not in terms of that it was poorly written or anything, because it was amazingly written, but just to make sure that we tie up all loose ends and that everything is consistent and so on and so forth. Because obviously I have all the stuff in the core book, there's a lot more behind that, but it's not written down. So I just want to make sure also, like you said, for future releases, that that we don't put something in this one that's going to mess up my plan for the next one. You know what I mean?
Sure. You move from being, creator to being editor.
Yes.
Or I can't remember exactly what they're called. There's a movie term for the people who keep the timeline of things straight.
Like a showrunner?
Essentially. Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of the role that you end up taking on when somebody takes your baby and starts to teach it some new tricks.
Exactly. And I love the new tricks. They just got to be within the ball, But that was one of the cool things about the core rulebook as well, is that I had contributions from some amazing people that had ideas that I would never have come, So then it was more about keeping that in line and making it consistent, but really making their ideas shine. And I think that worked out quite well. And it's the same with this. And right now I'm working on a scenario written by Crystal Mazur, who is one of the writers from Chicago by Night, amongst other things. So we're working on that now and about to go through the same process again.
That's awesome. So how long, just kind of a rough average, I mean, there's a few products out already, but how often are you trying to shoot for when it comes to releasing new content for Black Void?
Right. My original plan was to have 2 major releases a year and between 2 and 4 minor ones. And minor would be something like Dark Dealings.
Okay.
Except it didn't turn out to be minor. It all of a sudden became fairly major. I'll tell you. So I think it was a huge learning for me in terms of how long both the writer and I spend on making the final product.
Right.
And I think it took longer than I had anticipated. Obviously now with COVID and everything going on, that screwed up things royally, because I'm doing homeschooling for 2 of my boys, and the young one is home from nursery as well, and so on. So obviously I do that during the day, and then I Black Void at night, mostly. But the way things are right now, so we just released this one, obviously. Then we have the one from Crystal, which I'm hoping will be done and ready for release in hopefully no more than 2 months. At the same time, I'm working on the first source book / grand campaign book.
It'd be a Voidfarer's Travelogue, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to be 3 parts. So one is the travelogue bit, one is the player's options, which is, new attributes, new equipment, so on and so forth, and then the grand campaign. And the grand campaign is going to be 2 parts, where the first one is entirely written.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and that's going to be Kickstarted. Actually, it was supposed to be Kickstarted right now, but with everything, I felt it more prudent to push that off a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe get a little bit further, and then focus on put all focus, not all focus, but a lot of focus on the crystal one, because those are, at least initially, intended to be released as PDFs, which obviously in the current environment is great, because then people can have immediate access to them, despite local gaming stores being shut down and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's very handy in that regard, where, I mean, I know that you, me, probably Larry as well, I know Brandon for sure loves to have a physical book to look through. And
the
I think
Dead Tree version is the only one that matters.
I mean, that's true. It's so much more enjoyable of an experience to have it, and I mean that new book smell and everything that goes along with it, you just don't get in a PDF version. But it is a necessity in this time right now.
Yeah. And then, but if you look at Dark, you see that the layout is on a physical release.
Mm-hmm.
In the terms of how it's set up and so on, because that was always my intent.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of questions from people of, will this come in a printed version and so on, and it will, as soon as circumstances allow.
Right.
Because I cannot wait to hold it in my hands, the physical version as well.
That's I know that on a lot of the other shows you've talked about the art and the things that have gone on with it. Some of the art you've done yourself, some of the art you have commissioned as well. I'll touch briefly on it because you've talked about it quite a bit. Do you continue to put your own art into the subsequent stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be some poor quality art in there. Stuff. Yeah, I do put some of my own in there.
We love the self-deprecation of Dueling Ogres. It's fine.
Yeah, that's how. I mean, and I do so well. It's a mix, because some things are easier just for me to do myself rather than to try to explain it to an artist.
Right.
And then obviously there's some stuff that's way beyond my pay grade, so to say.
Right. Yeah.
So all the amazing color pieces, the full page pieces and so on, I have people to do those, because I have the most wonderful artists collaborating with me on this. Luca has done some amazing stuff. Vincent has done some amazing stuff. Tan has done some amazing stuff. Ekaterina do some incredible creature pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been really fortunate to find these amazing people who, for some reason, still want to work with me. So I'm really happy with it.
It hits a personal note, because I started doing transition effects and like starting screens and things for Twitch streamers, and I kind of taught myself After Effects and Premiere Pro and that sort of thing, and have just learned through YouTube. And I recently handed over some of my work to another fella who was wanting to learn it and get into it, and it's interesting because it's almost like you're taking that concept and you're like, I don't have the capability to draw the beauty that I know that this should be, so I'm going to hand off my baby idea to you so I can see it in its full beautiful glory.
Exactly. And not only that, because what happens as well is that you have a vision of that you want, but quite often what you get back is 10 times better than what you envisioned. At least that's what I get with my artists.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most incredible things. I mean, I love getting my vision reflected back at me, but with somebody else's stamp on it, because that really just brings it to a whole different level. and all the artists do that for sure.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I definitely wanted to touch on, because I haven't heard too much about this, is the music.
Yeah.
So you have dabbled in music,
yes,
in your life as well. So tell us a little bit about your musical background, and then what part of you is going into the music for Dark Void. I haven't even heard any of it yet, so I'm interested to look into it.
Of my music or the Black Void music?
Either or. Or both.
All right. Okay. So what? So I was in a band for about 10 years, and we did sort of grunge metal kind of thing.
Okay.
And had a lot of fun with that, and did some small tours in Denmark and Norway. And I think we won Demo of the Month from the biggest music magazine in Denmark, and so on. So good stuff.
Hell yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, but it never really sort of took off the way we wanted to.
Sure, yeah.
The band isn't officially disbanded, so technically it's still, except I live in Singapore, our bassist lives in Amsterdam, and our singer lives in Denmark. But anyway, so with that background, I obviously have some understanding and appreciation of music and so on. And I always really wanted to have a soundtrack for Black Void, because I have my playlist that I used to listen to when I was writing Black Void, which is a mix between sort of Indian-inspired stuff, Arabic-inspired stuff, and then some different ambient pieces. And then what happened was I got in contact with Petja from Crafty Tabletop Games, and he had a friend named Philip who is a composer, and he out of the blue sent me a sample of something he'd made because he got inspired, by the Kickstarter, and because Petja is his good friend and he was involved as well.
That's cool as hell. I love that. That's
I
awesome.
know, it's just insane. There's been so many of these little things in this that just completely has blown me away. And what he sent me was I just sat there with my jaw on the floor, because it just encapsulated everything that I wanted the ambience of Black Void to be. I'm a very auditive guy. So when something strikes a chord with me, it's just, I'm in heaven.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So when he did that, I said, can I please use this for the background music for the Kickstarter video? And he was like, yeah, sure, no problem, do that. And then we started talking, and then obviously I said, well, I would love to get more, but I can't promise anything. But if I do some stretch goals, then would you be willing to do stuff? And
to compose a score for the whole thing?
Exactly. So we did that, and he's done. So he did 6 finished tracks that were part of the rewards. He's actually done a 7th now for the travelogue, and he's working on more, because there's supposed to be a soundtrack for that as well.
That's cool.
Which is because the first one was sort of an overall impression of Lynn with some specific things, and now it's more specific, tied to the areas that are being explored. But yeah, I mean, and the process was so amazing. I mean, I found out, because I hadn't been working with music for a while when we did that. So just getting back into that, and he sent me, the tracks, and then I just spent hours just listening through, and like, no, 2 minutes and 13 seconds in, can you tweak this? And, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And it was really getting back in the saddle in an amazing way, because, he's an amazing composer. I mean, he just hits everything I tried to explain to him, he just hit spot on, and we had so much fun just going back and forth with, tweaking, and then just sitting and listening through the entire done was just an amazing experience for me.
And that's one of those things that's just, it's wonderful, because it gets to, here you are, you're still being a creative, you're still creating this world that that beats in your blood, but at the same time being able to scratch the musician itch of your creative side as well, and being able to work that into this entire thing that you have is a wonderful experience. What the other kind of thing? So the music itself is for Black Void. Is it still following that kind of Middle Eastern influence? Because I know that I know that the setting itself is very influenced by the Middle Eastern culture, not just necessarily because you live there, but because you also had kind of a fascination with it beforehand.
True. I mean, that's sort of the basis, but we are veering off and trying things. And one of the things that I like, which I think is also quite evident in the entire thing, is to take bits and pieces from here and there and everywhere and then compile it into something different, which is what I think we managed to do with the soundtrack as well. I mean, because Philip, he's Serbian, so obviously there's some Balkan influences in there as well, which I think fits wonderfully into the whole soundscape of things. I can't reveal too much, but we're exploring different cultures as well in this one.
Well, and it makes sense to do so as well. I mean, when you have all of these different homemade creatures, sentient creatures or non-sentient creatures, to have a piece that highlights what you think that these, the beat that they march to, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's really exciting from a musical standpoint as well.
Yeah. So, which also gives him a lot of free range in terms of coming up with, interesting things. Because one of the things that I love working with artists, whether it's in painting or music or whatever it is to say, what do you want to do? What do you love doing? Because when people get to do something that they love, but within the I said, then it tends to produce amazing results rather than saying, well, you have to do specifically this. You know what I mean?
Right. I know how that is for sure.
Yeah. So that's how I try to approach things and saying, right, this is what I need, but what do you love to do, so we can find the common ground, so we can get the best out of it for all of us, basically. Yeah. And Philip definitely did that. So he's I'm so happy I got to work with him, and still do, by the way.
Yeah.
I would like to step back to the upcoming products and ask a couple questions about those, if you don't mind.
Shoot.
Well, specifically, the scenario coming up that you had mentioned that your Crystal Mazur is working on. That one, from what I had heard, is going to be maybe starting in Lynn, but then the focus of it's going to be taken outside the city and into the surrounding area. Is that true?
It's not so much the surrounding area, but it will involve voidfaring and going to other worlds for sure.
Well, you mentioned voidfaring, so that leads me to my next question.
You buried the lead.
I know you had mentioned your source book coming up, and that's one of the big products that you were going to be kickstarting. You're going to do a section in it with a couple districts as far as the travelogue part. Do you plan on releasing source books like this as part of your major releases during the year to hit specific districts, or will they be more part of another project, like where you had the Camellia district is somewhat detailed in the scenario you just released the other day with the Shaded Souq?
The plan is to do travelogues for all the districts of Lynn. So the next one I can say is about Kima and Daris, those two districts. And that is at least where some of the campaign is going to take place as well. Then the plan is to have the next travelogue might be about another world, not one in Lynn. But then after that, reverting back to focusing on 2 other districts, and so on and so forth, until all the districts are covered in more granular.
Well, that one with the Camila district, for instance, in this the Shaded Souq, it's several of the buildings themselves, or what you'd call, I guess, points of interest, are marked specifically. You have the entire district map included with the scenario in which everything happens inside this district. Is that the kind of level of detail you're wanting to get into, and still leave a lot of the district for the arbiters to decide for themselves?
Yes, I mean, for the travelogue, it's going to be more granular, with more points of interest and locations and so on. But that being said, a lot of it's going to be left blank for the arbiters to come up with their own ideas and fit into it what they want to. Because that's how I like games to be, you know, where you have sort of the sights to see and interesting points, but at the same time you have a lot of where you fill in whatever fits you. So that's definitely how it's going to be. Yes.
Well, the layout in the books you've released so far, I've got Those Who Would Be Gods here in the core book, and then a couple the PDF, along with the Black Void Arbiters. What do you call it? The Arbiter screen with all the information tabs on it. Everything. So, I mean, specifically grabs you visually. Most of it is sort of a black on white, at least, you know, very dramatic with the art and everything. But the quality of the products, the artwork, and the layout is consistently excellent. It's a great RPG product from different standpoints. But specifically with what I noticed in this scenario, the Shaded Souq, the way, and it follows through from the way it was also laid out with Those Who Would Be Gods. When you go over, I have an overview, then you break everything down into scenes, and then underneath the scenes, it's broken down even more. So it makes it very practical and fairly easy for an arbiter to grasp the overall situation that you're setting up and also the details in it. And I just want to say that's a really nice way for a layout to be presented. And how long did that style take for you to come across? Because it seems like it would be nice if a lot more products did it that way.
Well, first of all, thank you. I'm very happy. And you know, that style came across quite quickly because it's stolen from actual tourist guides around the world.
Oh, nice!
Because that's how they do it, and that makes a lot of sense. You know, if you look at, you know, city books and so on and so forth.
That's that marketing director coming out in you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I gotta use it for something, right? Sorry. Because you have the overall city. If you take a tourist guide to Rome, for instance, right? First couple of pages, you have the entire city map, and then you have it divided into the different sections. And there, in each of those, you have more zoomed-in maps detailing, you know, the points of interest and all that stuff. And that's how I always wanted to do it, because that to me just makes sense. And as you have, you know, your general overview, and then you to where you want to be. So I'm really happy that actually has come across in a workable way.
That's kind of how I like to do. Wait, now I'm getting confused. Brandon, which way do I like? Do I like to do a top-down view of a world when I build it, or is that you? I forget now.
Oh, you strike me as a bottom-up, Remington.
He might have stepped away for a minute. If I remember right, I like to do world creation, and then I kind of zoom in on the different cities and then the sections of the cities, and that tends to be how I like to work, if I remember right. It's been so long since I've designed anything. God.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it can go both ways. Sometimes I start out with doing a scene or an event, and then afterwards I want to try to figure out where to put it in the map. I mean, because the map is already done, so it's more with finding, you know, the right locations for stuff, which can be a challenge in itself.
Right.
But so I'm not good with being consistent in my approach, so to say, because it sort of depends on where inspiration comes from. Sometimes it goes one way, sometimes it goes the other. It's difficult to say. But one thing I do want to be consistent in, as you guys are, is the layout. There is a certain way that you can expect the Black Void product to be, which is the one you see now, obviously. There might be some tweaks and stuff going forward as I learn to do things better.
Right.
But I think the overall formula needs to be consistent. And I think we managed to find a pretty good way of doing it.
That's one of those things that I appreciate because I love whenever I would do spreadsheets for D&D in Excel, and then I'd learned Visual Basic for applications on the back end so I could make them do like random generation. But I would always make the front end of it look good.
Yeah.
That way, if I hand it off to somebody else, they can be like, oh, this is nice and it's easy to use. So
exactly.
I appreciate that kind of minutia, that kind of detail oriented view of how to approach the creation of your product.
Yeah, and I think that's probably, now that you mention that aspect, I think a lot of it is at least inspired by my marketing background in terms of presentation,
Sure,
and ease of consumption, so to say.
Right.
So it's about the presentation, because if the idea isn't presented well, then it won't really matter, because nobody's going to be interested in actually looking at it.
Right.
Again, I could gush a little bit. The products have I don't know what you exactly call it, but from the start, the core book and the other products that have been released in this family all have a consistency that supports each other, and it's getting to the point where the next product, you're setting a pretty high bar so far, expecting excellency, which is a good thing.
So speaking of products, I think we've covered pretty much everything. The only last thing that I wanted to touch on was the dice. So that was part of the Kickstarter. I found it very interesting. You did talk about it in one of the other podcasts that you were on last year. And I found it fascinating. So one of the first things that I did when I looked at Modifius' site was check out the dice. And man, that is a beautiful set of dice.
Thank you.
So did you do the total design for them, or?
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. And then you said that of course it's a base 12 system. But all of the dice have kind of hidden symbols and such that you can utilize in different ways?
Not all of them, but the D12 has. So the D12 has hidden symbols so that it works both as a D4 and a D3.
That's awesome.
Hidden inside the various symbols on there.
So like the 12 has like the 12 itself, and then you've got like 4 white dots that are within the black background.
Yeah, exactly. So because at the beginning I wasn't obviously sure how much funding I would have. So I thought if I only get to do one dice, I want to make sure that it's usable in as many different aspects as possible, which is why I designed it in that way.
That's really brilliant. I love that. So I think we have pretty much covered everything. I will wrap up with if anybody wants to check out Black Void and the subsequent products that have come afterward, you can head over to modivius.net /collections/black-void. You can pick up the core rulebook in both PDF. Physical copy, I imagine, will take some time because of the COVID thing, but
yeah.
There's also the free quick start, the free Flight from Salvation Square, both available. You can have your character sheet, which is beautifully designed as well. Is it just one page too?
It's 2-page.
2-page? Okay, gotcha. I didn't download it or anything yet, but I probably will afterward. Probably will after we're all done here. Because I'm kind of excited to take a look at all of the intricacies. I mean, it just the more
that's a good start, isn't it?
For sure. The more you hear about it, the more you're just like, man, I just want to friggin' dive into this thing.
Nice. Well, let's talk some more.
Yeah, you can also go over to blackvoidgames.com. Check out the entire website. There's also physical merchandise like shirts, phone covers, that sort of thing that you could purchase as well. You can read about the game, sign up for the newsletter.
Yep.
Even if you want to keep up to date. Also follow Chris on Kickstarter, as well as any of the other social medias. They're all listed on the website, or if you just type in Black Void, you'll pretty much get anything.
Did you specifically mention this past Thursday they released the PDF on Drive-Thru-RPG for the dark dealings in the Shaded Souq?
I didn't. But thank you, Larry.
I'm still having a little bit of trouble with the Souq.
The Souq?
It is foreign to my mouth. I keep wanting to say soup.
Shaded Souq. Well, that's all right. You can do that. Garner some controversy. That's good. Awesome.
If I can harken back just to the core book and the basic systems you use in there, one of the things I really like is you mentioned the word granularity a few times, and just looking through the equipment list, it's expansive. I mean, you've got the 7 different types of armor, you've got a lot of different weapons, and you've got customization for those. You can really, really get in there, and with your talent skills, with a little bit of growing your character, you can customize them and their equipment and the way they interact with people, whether that's fighting styles, fighting maneuvers. The system is there to really let you make whatever you want to play, and it's just really, really well thought out, works well together. It's a nice system, and I'm glad you put it out there.
Thank you. Much appreciated. I'm happy you feel that way.
I love Larry's fanboying.
So do I.
Well, I mean, so many times if you, like Remington, you mentioned, most of us play at least, most likely D&D at least once in a while, because that's in this area, that's what you're going to get. But online play, you can find all those other games. But I mean, the fact that, like with the armor system, if you wear your different styles of armor in this game, it's going to affect your movement if it's a heavy armor or if it's a clumsy type of armor. But it's worth it because you get damage reduction with, if you're going to be a big tank, you want damage reduction, and you can sure get it. Mm-hmm. So again, that's another style of play that lets you customize your character. It's just really got a lot of moving parts that you can fiddle with.
That's an interesting point to kind of bring up, Larry, because you've seen, for those of us who've played RPGs for a while, we've seen these similar systems, maybe not necessarily done to the degree, but you do see a lot of that in video games. Do you have video game influences as well that have played into how you've designed these sorts of things, Chris?
No, not really. I mean, the reason for that was, so the thing with Black Void, it's kind of like a sci-fi game, but without the futuristic bits. And obviously in a lot of sci-fi games, you can guns and find different ammunition and so on and so forth. And I love that aspect, and I wanted to bring that to a fantasy RPG, and that's why it was done in that way, as well as the fact that you don't have magic items. So and I know obviously a lot of people want to go for the loot and finding that Holy Avenger or whatever it is, right? Which you cannot in Black Void, but you can find your bespoke weapons that have been tweaked and updated and upgraded to how you want them to be. So one of the things that I still enjoy is sitting and designing weapons and for the antagonists of the modules, for instance. And to make these really interesting weapons, so that it's not just sword, this is a spear, but this is you notice that the grip is very nicely made and that the balance is top notch.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite weapon that you've kind of created?
One that's been customized?
Yeah, something that maybe an NPC uses that you were just like, man, this is just a cool friggin' weapon.
I quite like the glaive that Sutin has in this new one.
Uh-huh.
But I think one of the coolest ones I have done are actually in the core book, which is Kun Ashar's daughters, which are his two crow bills. I can't remember what page they're on, but that's one of the NPCs from the Furadani Enclave. He has two crow bills, and each is upgraded differently.
It's on page 308.
If you say so.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now.
That's awesome. All right.
Because those were I think those were actually the first ones that I did that are actually in the core book. Mm-hmm. So obviously those are sort of the outset of the entire thing. But I think there's more bespoke weapons in this module than in any of the previous ones, because that's an aspect I really wanted to start to explore, to give more personality to the NPCs as well, because that really influences how they act if you actually go into combat with them, and it gives them something specific, and something specific for the players as well, if they manage to get a hold of this weapon.
And that kind of leads me to one last little one-off question: is, do you have, of the current released material, do you have a favorite NPC that really just sits fun with you?
A favorite NPC? That's a really good question, actually.
I try to get off the beaten path.
Yeah, well done. That's now I'm just racking my brain to see who are really, because there's a lot of them that are really cool. Mostly the ones done by John or Dan, I really like, because they have a lot of depth to them.
Uh-huh.
You know, the funny thing about this one is that as we were working with all the entities and antagonists in the Dark Dealings, you know, I started to build up appreciation for each of them that I didn't really have when we just started out. They all sort of grew on me, and I'm feeling like, oh, I don't want stuff to happen to this guy, even though he's a complete asshole, you know? Because
right.
There's a reason he's an.
Yeah.
I quite like Zagan from the new one. He's got this Bond villain-esque kind of thing to him that I think is really, really cool.
That's awesome.
And that's actually, that was in the brief that I sent to Luca to do the art from. I was like, okay, so do a Jinn, but that acts like a Bond villain, and that's what he came up with. So, and I think he hit it right on the spot. That's why he's sort of stroking that creature in his arms as well in the art.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll definitely use that in the description or as header file for the episode.
Exactly. Do that.
For sure. All right. I think that wraps up. I don't want to take too much of your morning away.
It's all right. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I'm glad to have you on. I'm glad that we were able to snag you up and wrestle your morning away. And
sure thing. Anytime.
Again, modifius.net for all of the material there, or head over to blackvoidgames.com and then hit up any of the social media platforms if you want to continue following Black Void and Chris.
Yeah, one last thing for me, though. Were you going to explain how I'm supposed to say this word?
The idioma?
Is it just agoma then?
Idioma. It's with a soft G.
Oh, idioma.
Yeah.
Wow. That sounds like a nice name for a very small, cute pet, though.
I know. And actually, I didn't come up with it. Cameron, he's one of the collaborators. He originally did this monster. So yeah. So some of the more weird words, aren't even of my making. So I know I have a tendency to make very weird. People have said, "Can you please do less complicated words going forward?" But no, sorry, I cannot.
Dude, I'm the same way with like elven names. Somebody will be like, "You want to come up with an elven name for me?" And I'm like, "No, you don't want me to do that because you'll never be able to pronounce it."
Exactly.
But I'll tell you who
Hmm.
has the best gnomish names is Brandon.
Really?
Oh yeah, he has had some great
Give us
gnomish
an
names
example.
over the years.
It's kind of my specialty.
Is it?
What- Give a couple of examples, Brandon.
Yeah, I need to hear it.
I had my most famous one is Magiswig and Bibble.
Magiswig and Bibbleflop. Yeah,
Say that
Yeah.
3 times quickly in a row, yeah?
right. He had one called Sans Pantalones.
Nice.
It was just based off of Spanish. It's freaking hilarious.
Exactly.
I'm surprised you remember that. That's hilarious that you do.
That's one of my favorite ones. I don't just because it was based off of Spanish. I don't speak any other languages, but I really enjoy languages.
Mm.
I haven't had the ability to get the immersion necessary to learn a language all the way through.
No, I mean but that's the key for most English-speaking natives, right?
It
Because
is.
You don't need it. Whereas us Danish, we need it because there's so few of us and nobody wants to speak our language, which is fair enough.
I would love to learn Danish if you want to teach it to me, Chris.
No, you wouldn't. I can pretty much guarantee you wouldn't.
I will say, I mean, a lot of those Scandinavian languages have they'll make your mouth tired if you're not used to speaking them, for sure.
True.
Yeah.
But that's unfortunately the case for a lot of languages. I mean, when we started trying to learn Arabic, and my jaw was in pain, at least a couple of days after every time.
Right.
You just bend, in ways you're not used to.
Yeah, you use different muscle groups in your mouth, and it's really fascinating. I love it. I love that sort of thing.
I mean, I love languages as well. But rather than having to learn different ones, I just invent them now, which is so much easier.
Taking a page out of Tolkien's book.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna go that granular. But Dan asked me to do a naming conventions for the different species because obviously he came up with a lot of names, and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really sound like a GL name, and it does. You haven't told me. So I'm like, oh yeah, shit, you're right. I gotta do like a naming convention because you have any chance of something feasible.
Right.
So yeah, that's in the works. That's probably gonna get released at some point as well for all the mega nerds out there.
Oh god, that'd be awesome. I love that.
I love that. It's fun to work on, man.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Chris. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
If you have any questions or comments or you'd like to hear yourself on air, you can call us at 978 DU-OGRES. That's 978-386-4737. You can also reach us on Twitter at Dueling Ogres, email us at duelingogres@gmail.com, or leave a comment on the Facebook page. Like these nice people, Brandon, go.
Our first comment was from the Diamond Man, Stephen Hines, who says, "Congrats on 200 episodes, dudes. I laughed a lot during this episode and during these trying times that is badly needed. I agree with Terry that having Chad and Bucky on at the same time was really cool."
Yeah.
Our next comment was from Nega-Larry, who says, "Grats on 200. My money's on penis, kissy face. Synchronized chip munching was a treat. I actually enjoyed your Patreon because of this episode. I actually joined your Patreon because of this episode. Here's to
thanks,
200
Larry.
more."
Anytime.
Christy says, "Congrats on 200 episodes. Can't wait to while maintaining a safe social distance." Viscount Terry W. over the second commented and said, "Way to go 200th. Looking forward to the 500th.
Oh,
Disappointed that Brandon ranked Wrath of Khan below the Search for Spock. Makes me want to question his judgment in all things." Quote of the episode from Remington: "You guys are boring me to death. Enjoy Chad and Bucky being in the mix."
Chris, I literally fell asleep while Chad and Bucky were talking. If you listen really closely, I was so tired that day. If you listen really closely, you could probably hear me snore.
I'll have to review that for sure.
And our final comment was from Cliff Barnes of the Kapow the Pop Culture podcast, who says, "Congrats, guys."
Yeah, they had their 200th episode before us, which
they're on like episode 210 now.
I know. It's like they're not staying away from each other or using technology to their advantage or some bullshit like that.
How dare they?
How dare they?
Well, congratulations from the Void as well. 200. That's damn impressive.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You can hear stories of podcasts that have gone along and then have just kind of petered out, and it's nice to do something with your best friend and to do it more or less every week for several years. And
exactly.
Even if we don't get to spend,
I'm a little bit jealous because that's amazing.
Even if we don't get to spend a lot of time together outside of it, at least we, 2 or 3 hours to just kind of hang out and bullshit with each other.
Yeah.
I love that.
Also like to
start a podcast.
Go for it. If you need any tips, let me know. Also like to give a shout out to Bucky, Chad, Heavy No More, The Real Fat Tony, and Nega-Larry here for contributing to our Patreon. We really appreciate it. It's very helpful to keep the game alive and to keep just a little something to make sure that I can continue putting out quality stuff. So I appreciate all of you guys who keep giving. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And make sure to subscribe on our website at duelingogres.com for new shows and articles pertaining to some of your favorite geek news. Larry, I suspect that you are going to continue working on your article for the new Black Void release, right?
Yes, hope to get a written one up soon. I'm still going through the module myself. I'm a little slow.
Chris, you just need to write smaller modules, man.
Just let me know,
Oh, it's more due to I have a broken ankle and a broken toe, so I'm just sort of trying to sit down and concentrate. It's my number one task.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to do if you're trying to suffer through the pain and then read through a module.
True.
And finally, be sure to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or find us on YouTube, iHeartRadio, or nearly anywhere else you can find a podcast. Thank you again, Chris, for stopping by. Thanks, Larry, for joining in. I appreciate both of you being here. Larry, for bringing the knowledge that we didn't have to the game for Black Void, and Chris for just being a wonderful interview. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So until next week, Ogres, keep your clubs blunt.
And your tusks sharp.
Good night.
Can I ask you a measurement question?
Sure.
Okay.
Whoa! Hold on.
No, it may be a simple answer, but I just don't know it here.
It's really personal.
In the core book, and then also in the Shaded Souq book, it mentions when you're talking about a length or a height, sometimes it mentions cubits, and I just that seems odd. It's not something I hear very often. So why do you use that?
Because that's the measurement they used in ancient Babylon.
That makes sense.
So that's just something the humans brought with them.
It's just to add a bit of flair to it, basically, because a cubit is a measurement that varies from different cultures because it's been used in different. I mean, the Romans used it, the Babylonians used it. I think the Carthaginians probably used it as well. Basically, it's the distance from your elbow to the tip of your fingers. And normally you would say it's about half a meter.
It's weird that I knew that. I think I heard that on there's a fella who on YouTube who's going through and starting like from the beginning of human history and is relearning how to create things, and I think he talked about it once. So it's just weird that bit of information had stuck in my brain and I didn't even realize it did.
Exactly. Well, that's the sign of a nerd, isn't it?
Yeah. We have tons of useless information in our brains.
Exactly. Mountains. But the interesting thing is that because you guys use feet and so on, so why did the foot remain, but the cubit was sort of taken out of use? Because that's more handy. Excuse the pun. And one of the reasons for doing it is that generally I stick to using meters. But just to add that little bit of flair, but have a measurement which is easily translatable, at least in meters, in just saying that it's half a meter. That's why it's there, and it's sort of the whole point is that it's sort of written from the viewpoint of humanity, which is why it's used. There are very few sort of universal things in Lynn, but if I had to really convey that, it would be a huge chaos, It's sort of the same as in if you take 40K, where most things are written from the perspective of the empire or the imperium. It's kind of a similar approach, just to make it more accessible and consistent. So
it's just a point of view, essentially.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's not permeating everything,
right?
But in some aspects, I think it makes more sense, and can give that consistency that otherwise might be lacking.
Well, especially in a system where the humans are the minority. I mean, I imagine that they will be feverishly trying to hold on to whatever semblance of the past that they can.
Exactly. I mean, that's one of the points. One of the points is cultural differences and the battle between cultures, so to say. And since you can only play as human or something close to human at the current moment, at least, it made sense for me that that's sort of the outset for the understanding of the world, which is also why you will notice the word seemingly being used extensively through all the works, because obviously people don't have the full understanding yet. So there's a lot of stuff that's seemingly going on.
That's awesome.
And that also gives me a nice avenue saying,
I love the mystery of it all too. Yeah.
Thanks. That's one of the things, because I like to write so that even the arbiters don't always know, because also that gives them free reign.
Right, for sure.
But it also, and this is not the reason, but it sort of gives me an escape route as well. If I want to change it at some point, saying, but it was just seemingly, it wasn't that way in reality.
Right. Yeah. Good writer leaves themselves an out, for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the things I realized. Shit, I wrote something set in stone, but I don't agree with it. do I do?
Or I don't have my script up. I was trying to pull it up as I went, and I'm not fast enough. Forgot where I put it. It's been a few weeks since we've recorded an episode, so
Yeah, it has.
I'm getting rusty.
I know. You can also reach us on. Okay.